We here at Uninterrupted are very excited to announce our brand new sponsor, the United Nations.
United there, United Nations.
The United Nations is a fantastic, fantastic product. Now you might be thinking, the United Nations, all they're good for is undermining national sovereignty. Not true. They also run some of the world's most successful child pedophilia rings. It's true. So you might think, hey, what do I need the United Nations for? Well, exactly. So you might be thinking, how do I get this fantastic product, the United Nations, that I love so much? Too bad, you're already subscribed. Ha 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 ha. They made us read that. So again, the United Nations is a fantastic product and everyone should love. And as the United Nations grand slogan goes, hey, whatever happens, let's just blame the Jews.
United there, United Nations.
In a world gone mad, only one man, okay, maybe more, had the courage to ramble on incoherently. The show is up and the reviews are in. This is the show that many people have described as good. Uninterrupted, Wednesday nights on Tag TV.
We're good? Okay. Welcome to all the fisher folk out there and people kind. Welcome, sit down, and get angry with me as today, we have a lot to go over. All right, so we're going to start with probably the most important story in the world, as Big Brother tech companies, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Pinterest, have been openly exposed as willfully interfering or aspiring to willfully interfere in political elections, censoring political viewpoints, while lying to Congress about it. I want to go into everything, what they are doing, what they were caught doing, what they're saying, and possible ways forward that do comply with, conservative libertarian viewpoints, because a lot of people are saying regulate, and I'll explain why that's not the best idea and a much better way to go about it. So we will get through the censorship of anything to the left of Karl Marx. Then we have the border crisis, or the non-border crisis, or when Trump says it's a border crisis, it's not a border crisis, but when CNN, we're going to get into everything on the American border because it's really important, just the lies that the left is going into, and I'll explain how the Democrats manufacture this crisis, how the media is enjoying it, and why the left doesn't care about migrant children. Then, the Danforth shooting. It has come to its completion. They have finished the investigation. The Toronto police have done the unprecedented move in their point, and they have explained that basically nothing to see here, AK-47s, mysterious trips to Pakistan, receipts from Pakistani organizations, 42 kilograms of chemical weapons. Yep, mental illness. It's all mental illness. So it will get me angry, and I will start ranting and raving. Hopefully you will rant along with me at home if you know the words, rant along. Then Canada. Another cycle concludes this. The M103. Remember stupid, silly conservatives who were... M103 is a non-binding motion. Well, we have a new definition of Islamophobia, and spoiler alert, everyone's Islamophobic all the time. We'll read about... I'll read you the definition of Islamophobia, why it's a bad definition, just what it could mean, and it's really in conjunction with a bunch of other laws that would make it stupid. So if you're here, like the video, share the video, like the page, follow along the page, follow me around town. I really enjoy that. Just hide in bushes. And if you don't like the page, do the thing where you send random weird death threats to the page. That's always appreciated. Now, Google, the largest website on the internet, who controls tons of traffic and political viewpoints, has been openly exposed as a left-wing political operative, straight out. I wanted to show you videos of what Project Veritas did, but it was removed from YouTube because a third party complaint about a privacy violation. Yes, the third party. Spoiler alert, YouTube and Google are the same company. So basically, they removed it saying a third-party complaint. Who complained about this? Like Hillary Clinton? Anyways, here's what you need to know. Big tech there's been a massive information dump coming from Project Veritas, which is the only real investigative journalists left. Like, remember when 60 Minutes used to do investigative journalism, where they'd expose people, then it became like pieces and then fluff pieces, and then it was just Bill Whitaker. So you're telling me the war in Iraq means that America had troops in Iraq. And it's like, yes, Bill Whitaker, that's what we're telling you. I don't like Bill Whitaker, but that's irrelevant. Investigative journalism is dead except for Project Veritas, which has done a great job exposing the left in a lot of different ways. One thing's they've exposed Pinterest for having anti-conservative bias. They've now exposed YouTube and Google for having anti-conservative bias. They've exposed unions for willfully covering up sexual abuse of children for the thing. So yes, they do expose left-wing bias in major organizations, but that's actually an important thing to do. So they have been censored here. Now, I'm going to read you an email that was obtained by Project Veritas and James O'Keefe from a Google employee to another one. So this was leaked. So here's just an internal conversation going on at Google. We're going to go over this, and then we're going to talk about the video that has been taken off the internet to a third-party complaint. So here's the email. Today is often one or two steps to Nazis. If we understand that PragerU, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro et al. Are Nazis using the dog whistles you mentioned in step 1, I can receive these recommendations regardless of the context of what I'm looking at. And I have recorded thousands of internet users sharing the same experience. I don't think correctly identifying far-right content is beyond our capabilities. But if it is, why not go with Meredith's suggestion of disabling the suggestion's features? This could be a significant step in terms of user trust. All right, and it's from Liam. So this implies that there are at least 3 Google employees who have I guess, access to the mainframe and the goings-on of Google, some somewhat senior employees. At least 3 are within an anti-right-wing conspiracy. That is deranged, a completely deranged right? Ben Shapiro, Orthodox Jew, Nazi. Dennis Prager, religious Jew, Nazi. Jordan Peterson spent years teaching about Nazi atrocities, also a Nazi, right? 1 or 2 steps away from Nazism. First, you start talking about why fascism is bad and why you need personal liberty and American and Western values. The next thing you know, it's and you're stepping and then you're going into Poland. Yes. Basically, you listen. As soon as you say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't regulate the market, the next day you just wake up and you're inside Czechoslovakia. Oops, you've annexed the Sudetenland. Happens to the best of us. Who hasn't gone on a bender and just wound up, am I in Poland right now? How did I get here? Covered in all this leather? Now, apparently you're not supposed to even use the word Nazi now because YouTube has started to pull videos of people teaching about World War II. How could this censorship possibly go wrong, right? We need to censor everything. And then you start taking off educational content about the Holocaust. So yes, I'm going to say the word Nazi, and yes, I'm going to openly state Nazis are bad. Hot take coming. I know, hot take. Daniel Boardman, Nazis, really bad. But sometimes you just got to, fight the power. Go where people aren't willing to go. It's ridiculous. So as I said, this implies that at least 3 people, a Liam, a Meredith, and someone else, are in on an insane conspiracy to sort of silence. They're working to actively undermine conservative political thought. Pretty mainstream. PragerU, pretty mainstream. Right? They're against market regulation, and they don't want gay abortions for illegal immigrants. But, that's not an extremist view. That's nowhere close to Nazism. Ben Shapiro was the #1 victim of the alt-right in 2016, right? And these people are basically Nazis. So it's 3 people. Now, I will say, it is likely far more than 3 people if this is a conversation, right? We know for sure it's 3, at least. Google's a big company, okay? But it's very likely to assume this goes beyond a 3-person scope because they're clearly talking about Meredith's section. It sounds like Meredith, whoever she is they're having meetings. It sounds like Google is having active meetings on how to curb conservative views on YouTube, which is what they own. Now, we're going to get all back into this and what this means because I want to go into the other part of the story because this has a bit of a climax here. All right. So another thing that was put out was a video with Jen Janee, who is the head of Google's Responsible Innovation team. You're doing something productive when you're talking about responsible innovation at a tech company. All right. So here's a quote from Jen Janee. If I pronounce her name, then screw her. I don't care. This is in terms of the AI they use. So here's a direct quote from the video that was taken down because it has a third-party violation. The reason we launched our AI principles is because people were not putting that line in the sand. They were not saying what's fair and what's equitable, and we're like, well, we're a big company. We're going to say it. She says, the people who voted for the current president do not agree with our definition of fairness. Straight out there, okay? We're going to do what's fair and equitable. We're a big company. We have control. And the people who voted for the president are just silly plebs. And we don't need to listen to them because they're not drawing the line in the sand. So it looks like here, the line in the sand is voting Republican. That's the line in the sand of what is not okay. Google says it's voting Republican. And they're putting that in their AI algorithms. Now, I raised the alarm for this over a year ago when I noticed that they were doing this to the Israel-Palestine debate. Before the invasion of peace, or the Great March of Return, or when they were started to riot every Friday at the border, I said, okay, they're planning this major riot for May 15th. And I wanted to put a video out in April, because what the Arab countries all do, and same with Iran, and the Palestinians are famous for this, is they will get on TV a couple months in advance in Arabic and rile up their base saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this, we're going to be violent, we're going to blow things up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say this to the media, and the media is going to report this. So a month before anything happened, I got out and said, hey, this is what they're going to do. They're going to riot, and on May 15th, they're going to push the border and manufacture this story. And I was completely right. But the thing is, I remember on May 16th, when I went to go research the sources that I had gotten for the early April video, I couldn't find those sources. I just couldn't. I searched the same things. I had them saved, but they were unsearchable. And I have witnesses for this. Right? There were certain Syrian prime ministers who I had quoted in the 1970s saying that they had manufactured the Palestinian refugee crisis and not the Arabs. This guy isn't even searchable on Google. He has a Wikipedia page, but you can't even search him on Google. It redirects you. Did you mean literally some random Pakistani dude? So they've been doing this forever, right? Google interferes with the algorithm for political gain, and I've been saying this for a while because I have seen it in action. Right? And and I've been saying this, all this anti-Zionism, anti-Israel, it's all anti-Western stuff. So whenever you find some queers for Palestine people, just know that that is the testing ground. And whatever they're going to do, they're then going to apply that to American and Canadian and European politics. And they have. So here we are. It's 2019 and it's out in the open. Google does not think that voting Republican is okay. Or maybe it's just Donald Trump. But either way, the line in the sand is voting for Donald Trump. Now, this goes on. These quotes get even better. Right? We're all about fairness and equity. Yeah, nothing goes wrong when you're talking about fairness and equity. I wish you could cue Soviet national anthem here. I got 7 million dead Ukrainians on the line. Yeah, how did fairness and equity go? Oh, that's right. They all died of starvation. But it was fair. All right. So here's another clip of her talking about breaking up Google. Now, I have a different reason why you shouldn't break up Google, but here is Google's Jen I on why you shouldn't. Here's Elizabeth Warren is saying we should break up Google, she says. And, I love her, but she's very misguided. That will not make it better, it will make it worse. Because all these smaller companies who do not have the same resources that we do will be charged with preventing the next Trump situation. It's like a small company cannot do that. It's like a small company. Read in the, oh my God, voice. Here it is. She sees her job as responsible innovation, right? I don't know what's innovation, right? Innovation is like the term of invention. You innovate, you make things better, right? Google innovation should be faster search engines, right? More interactive platforms, right? A better, way of filtering news or not, right? Innovation seems to be political activism. The left doesn't like innovation. I have a whole rant on that and what I learned at university, but we'll get into that another time, right? We are charged with preventing the next Trump situation. Now, this is the reason why you're seeing a lot of conservatives today saying, break up big tech, break up Google, right? Now, when people like Tim Pool say, break it up and regulate it, I get that. He's on the left. Not so much anymore, but he's still like a liberal lefty. The much better situation here, the much better alternative here, is sort of Ted Cruz. So I suggest everyone, you should watch the clip of Ted Cruz grilling a Google employee after the leaks. Not right now. You stay right there. Stay right there and you watch his show. And you like the thing and then you share it. So get back here. Get back here. Ted Cruz after. I know he's sexy, but sexy Ted Cruz is going to wait. But I'll just relay to you. He makes, Google has basically immunity from lawsuits based on the fact that it is a neutral platform. And they said, yes, we're a neutral platform. So what I say is a much better way of stopping Google and YouTube from doing all this, and the tech companies, is to revoke their immunity for being a neutral platform. This would mean that now you can sue Google as a publisher, not a platform. So we talk about this. Platforms are like the phone company, right? Canada, we have Bell and Rogers. I make a phone call on Rogers. Yes, terrorist friend, I am planning to do terrorism today. Would you like to join me in my terrorism at specific location? We're going to murder people for terrorism, right? Rogers or Bell isn't responsible for that. They're just a platform, right? It's me who's doing that. But if I were put it in a newspaper, right, if it's printed in the Toronto Star, the Toronto Sun, let's do some terrorism. Why terrorism is great. I inspire everyone to violence against Group X. You can then say, well, that's a publisher. They're liable for what they put out there. So when Google starts to censor people saying, okay, we're going to take action against Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson, Dennis Prager, you revoke their status. That means every terrorist who puts something that's searchable on Google, so basically any terrorist thing on the internet, you can now sue them for. But I remember there was a fight between Facebook and Israel about 8 years ago, because Israel wanted Facebook to remove Facebook pages that were openly encouraging people to commit terrorist attacks in Israel and putting out instructional videos of how to make bombs, how to place bombs in supermarkets, and how to kill the most amount of Jews with your bomb. And Facebook was all like, "Whoa, we're a free speech platform. We're so free speech. You know, we don't censor." So when you revoke this, so if you were to revoke this immunity, it would mean that the bombings in Sri Lanka, because the guy had YouTube videos out there for years, and ISIS recruits over Google servers, and they don't stop that, because they're acting now as a publisher, not a platform. The victims of these Sri Lanka bombings should have grounds to sue Google and YouTube. Right? If the Fort Hood shooter put out propaganda on the internet, and it's searchable under Google, if you're a victim or a family member of a victim of that shooting, you should have the ability to sue Google as a publisher. This would bankrupt Google. This would force Google to switch its behavior right away, or else it'd be bankrupt. The problem with splitting up Google is, right, you can split up into all these different divisions, and yes, it would cripple them for a few years in their ability to sort of regulate politics on the internet. But not fully, it would just cripple them. But as you would see, within 5 to 7 years, all these companies would find out a way to re-merge together, because it's kind of what the market demands, and it's the most efficient thing to do, and politicians would get in bed with lobbyists. So it's not a permanent solution, and it also sets the precedent that government can go in to businesses, break them up, and take control of them. So be careful what you wish for on the break up Google thing. Now, I find it hilarious that all the lefties who were screaming about net neutrality, if we don't have net neutrality, the world's going to end, all of them silent here. Right? Where is the mainstream media coverage of this? This is probably the biggest story in the last, 6 months, realistically. And where are the mainstream media outlets on this tech censorship? Where are they? Right? Google literally influences how people think. And they're so deranged, they're calling Ben Shapiro, Dennis Prager, and Jordan Peterson Nazis. 1 or 2 steps away from the Nazis, right? All of a sudden, you convert to Orthodox Judaism. That's a gateway drug to Nazism. The left is insane. These people have positions at Google. These people are making 6 or 7 figures. And they're like, yeah, Orthodox Judaism, basically Nazism. And I'm a Pakistani female fairy. But it's removed from the internet, right? They literally, they're so blatant that any criticism of them, they just remove from it. Now, it's too bad you don't have the Google video, but because we do a great job here at Tag TV and Interrupted, we actually have live footage from Google headquarters. So can we go to Google now to get a statement from Google employees? Pretty much. All right, that's kind of what we thought it would be. Meshuggah. So there you have it. The internet is being fully censored by Google. It's being fully censored by YouTube. They are cracking down on conservative viewpoints. Conservatives are being removed, being downgraded. There's just a report out again from Project Veritas right before I went to the air that they are downgrading or blacklisting pro-abortion, anti-abortion sites. You know, pro-life is a blacklisted term, and all these different things, right? They've basically categorized certain pro-life groups as pornography. It's pretty blatant, and crickets from the moral outrage over net neutrality, right? And we need free internet. Everything must be free. The government must regulate a free internet. Well, it turns out the internet censoring political viewpoints I disagree with. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, when I meant free for everyone, I meant free for everyone who agrees with everything I say all the time. The real definition of freedom. All right, moving on. So this week I had a lot of internet troubles, a lot of cable troubles, so I wasn't really able to get on the internet, which means I had to be listening to a lot of broadcast cable news. And learning from the CBC and CNN, I learned that, did you know that Donald Trump is very, 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 very bad? So Donald Trump is stupid and evil, and he was saying things like, there's a border crisis at the southern border. What a stupid idiot. And everyone who believes Donald Trump when he says there's a border crisis is a stupid, evil idiot. Because CNN told me that they... Wait. Ah, god damn it. Yes, as it turns out, CNN now agrees there's a crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border. Well, would you look at that? Gotta get rid of that now. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that such a thing could happen? Now, if you can recall, I know some of you, if you're voting Liberal or Democrat, you probably aren't old enough to remember 6 months ago when Trump tried to say, there's a crisis at the border. We need funding to fix it. And the Democrats said, no, Donald Trump is racist, Donald Trump is evil, anyone who doesn't hate Donald Trump is racist and evil and stupid and blah, 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 blah. And it's basically the Holocaust, right? We have AOC getting up there, concentration camps, right? They're putting people in the camps. Being the first concentration camps in history where people actually cross the border to get into. So if you're following the left, please note, if you're on the left, the current going theory is everything is literally the Holocaust, except for genocidal anti-Semitism, that's okay. Shout out to Ilhan Omar. Hamas. All right, so here we have it. A crisis at the border. Everyone now agrees there's a crisis at the United States border. What Trump is trying to say and trying to do is prevent people from crossing illegally into the border and then thus ending up in detention camps. Because crossing the border illegally, taking children on a journey, isn't a good idea. It's a really, really bad idea. It's not me saying this. It's not President Trump saying this. Let's get a reliable source. Let's listen to the American ambassador for Hezbollah, former President Barack Obama, talk about children trying to get into the United States just a few short years ago.
We don't even know how many of these kids don't make it and may have been waylaid into sex trafficking or killed because they fell off a train. We have no way of tracking that. So that is our direct message to the families in Central America. Do not send your children to the borders. If they do make it, they'll get sent back. More importantly, they may not make it.
Remember when people used to be halfway reasonable on immigration? Those days are over. Now the Democrats, the Liberals, the NDP, the left in general, globally in Europe, everyone has lost their minds when it comes to immigration. Completely lost their minds. Everything that was common sense for thousands of years, said by both political parties. I could show you clips of Barack Obama in 2006 and Bill Clinton in the 90s. Hillary Clinton too. What they're saying about immigration. Illegal immigration bad, legal immigration good. It's been every politician's viewpoint since forever. In 2016, Bernie Sanders went at the 1%. The open borders is a Koch brothers philosophy, and it hurts the American worker. Yeah. And the Koch brothers are hardcore libertarians. This is why I'm not a hardcore libertarian, because libertarians believe in free movement of labor. So they really don't have a problem with that. It's not a Koch brothers invention, but the libertarians don't really mind open borders if they're pure libertarians. But we'll get on from that. Remember, Bernie Sanders used to have some principles. Crazy ideas, but some principles. right? The Soviet Union is good. I go to take off my shirt and sing the song of the Soviet anthem because I love bread lines. Bread lines are good. You get a line, you get bread. What is better than that? A grocery store. A grocery store. Now, let's follow this from point A to point B. Actually, let's start with point B. Where are we today? We are at the point where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, and the AOC, Tlaib, Omar, and Presley, the four new progressives, are voting against all funding for anything, right? They're on the defund ICE, America's instituting concentration camps, and no more, right? Trump is evil, so he has to be stopped. Okay, how did we get here? So Trump tried to say, we have an immigration crisis. We need to build a southern border to deter illegal immigration because people are coming in illegally. It creates crime. It creates problems. As Barack Obama just said, there's child sex trafficking on the borders. Because here's something that every Democratic senator knows. Every single senator knows this as a fact. The left-wing base doesn't know this or wants to ignore it, or maybe just some of them, but every single Democrat knows this fact. The cartels control illegal immigration. No one comes through the Mexico-American border illegally except through the cartels. It's a lucrative trade, and the cartels control all of it. It's an under-the-table trade. Everyone knows this. Every single Democratic senator, every single Democratic House representative, every single politician knows this fact. Full stop. Okay? The cartels have control of everyone coming in and out of the border. That's why one of the most likely places you are to be raped in the world is traveling from South or Central America through to the American border, because you go into the hands of smugglers and cartels. That's why young women, right? If you're trying to bring your family into the States, any young woman, attractive young woman coming through the American border illegally, you're likely to end up either raped or trafficked into the sex trade. Okay? It's a horrible thing. No one wants it to happen, but that's what happens when you deal with cartels. Cartels chop off random people's heads to prove a point. They don't really get stuck up about rape and sexual slavery. It's one of the things they do. That's a hard truth. Now, the way this happened is we have to go back a few years now. It used to be the majority of illegal immigrants were single men trying to cross in and then make some money, send it back home. That used to be the majority of illegal immigration. But then the Obama administration started to give these blanket amnesty to kids. So when the Democrats incentivized, right, said if families come in, if children come in, we're going to sort of, it boosted your claim. So now there was an incentive to bring your children to cross the border. So this meant that tons of children started trying to cross the border. I know Barack Obama said that, but he enabled it through policy, but then tried to dissuade it through rhetoric. Didn't work. Right? What you incentivize will happen. So people started to bring their children across the border. That's what the Democrats want you to think. It's just families doing this. The problem is the cartels are using children as shields as well. So what they're doing is they are taking children with them across the border, right? If they're drug smugglers or human traffickers, they're taking kids with them. So if they get caught, they could say, "This little Miguel, I am his father. He's all I have in the world," and it's more likely to help out your claim. Then we get stuck in this limbo. So what are we going to do? We have children coming across the border who are unaccompanied, right? We have unaccompanied minors coming through the borders. We have children who are not coming with their parents across the border, but coming with sex traffickers. We have to figure this out. What do you do? Just release them into the wild, right? Or Anatoly, what do you do? Set them free on the streets of San Francisco, or would you put them in a center with housing? Now here's the problem: the centers are overcrowded. They're too small. They can't handle the influx of illegal immigrants. It's almost like there's a crisis at the border. So what did Trump want? He wanted funding to secure the border so less people would be likely to get in, to deter less people from coming in, to stem the flow, and to make bigger camps to hold the people there for processing. Now, this is where the left comes in. AOC, I will give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's not evil. She could be monumentally stupid. I will leave the possibility. There's a good chance that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is just really, 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 really stupid. Maybe. The other one's straight evil. This one, maybe just a dum-dum. So what they started to do is push this concentration camp narrative, right? It's a concentration. Trump wants money to build giant mass detention centers at the border because he loves detaining people, right? We have this narrative. Defund ICE. Remember when Bernie Sanders, when this first came, defund ICE, was defund ICE. It was the radical left. And then he said, no, we don't really want to defund ICE. It makes no sense. We still need immigration services. We just want to reform it into a more humane organization. Then Bernie Sanders is a racist. Right, fine, defund ICE. We can't give any more money to the ICE. Although I want money. So we will put a 1,000,000% tax on the ICE. Okay? And if the ICE is not cold enough, then I want it in Russia for the tax. And Bernie, what are you talking about? I don't know. But the 1% of ICE is taking 99% of all the other ICE, and it's not fair. That became Bernie's new position. Crazy Uncle Bernie. All right, so people used to be having this. But now the rhetoric you're supposed to come from the Democratic Party is defund ICE because it serves their purposes. Because it's a very easy narrative for people to say, right, ICE is evil. Right? It's being portrayed in the media as this evil Nazi-esque organization, bootstepping, knocking down doors, ripping kids from their families. That's what ICE is doing. And if we defund that, it goes away. When in reality, if you defund ICE, if you stop giving money to border enforcement, it means that when these immigration institutions run out of money, they don't have money to take care of the people they're detaining. It means that rooms built for 150 people will end up hosting 400 people because there isn't the money to build bigger facilities with more state-of-the-art equipment because we can't do it. See, this is one of the things I hate because these detention centers have been around since the 80s. Right? There are pictures of Obama's Department of Homeland Security executives walking through children in cages where it's literally it will say children ages 8 to 17 and then with the fences around them. And one of the reasons there's fences is to separate the young men who might be cartel affiliated from the children who they might abuse. Right? Not everyone coming through the border is a cartel person, but a lot of them are. Right? One of the most likely places to be raped is trying to get in, cross illegal, is illegally immigrating. Anywhere, really. Right? And we know the effects of this on the deaths. So, I mean, we showed, there was that picture of the new picture they're going to try and push of the El Salvadorian father and daughter who they found drowned. When this happened, they did this in Turkey when they had the Alan Kurdi photo of the refugee from Turkey. Oh no, he died trying to cross the canal. Before that, you had an average of about 20 deaths per year of people trying to cross the canal. After that, and after we liberalized the immigration policy, after Sweden and Germany said, yeah, if anyone makes it here, free, home game, thousands started to die in the crossing because it incentivized bad, silly behavior. It incentivized people to not apply for proper refugee claim status in Turkey and instead just try and float themselves over to Greece. Spoiler alert, Greece doesn't have money. Hasn't had it since 2008. So they don't have money to help you because they don't have money to help themselves. Nevertheless, you had people going on rickety boats, dealing with smugglers. Smugglers aren't always the nicest people. Some smugglers are good people, but they're sending their best. Some of them are rapists and murderers. That's true about human smugglers. But instead, the priority of the left is to feel good instead of do good. Right? And here's a perfect example of the left-wing base. So here's Wayfair. Here's an article from CBS of Wayfair employees are staging a walkout to protest the company's sale of mattresses to the detention centers. So if you're a left-wing person, this sounds great on its surface, right? We're working for a company that is selling mattresses to detention centers. We don't want to be associated with detention centers. That's the mental axiom the left is working on there. However, here's reality. Wayfair is giving the best prices to the US government. What you're doing is you're providing mattresses to kids. Now, you might not like detention centers, but you have to understand that if you don't fulfill that contract, it means someone else will fulfill that contract. And Wayfair was giving the government the best price, which means the government will now have to pay more for mattresses, which means less supplies for those kids. Right? If you just want to get every company to boycott sales to the detention center, all you've succeeded in doing is taking overcrowded rooms meant for 150 people that have 400 in it and turn them into overcrowded rooms with no mattresses. All you've done is force those kids to sleep on the floor so you could feel good about yourself and have dumb congresswomen sing your praises. Let's see what AOC has to say about this idiocracy. Wayfair workers couldn't stomach they were making beds to caged children. Never mind. They asked the company to stop. CEO said no, because CEO has brain. Tomorrow, they are walking out. This is what solidarity looks like, a reminder that everyday people have real power as long as we are brave enough to use it. No, it's a reminder that people are stupidly brainwashed by the left-wing media. And if you've been watching this show for a while, you know I have said to this. The way you avoid detention centers, if you are a Mexican family and you're looking to get into the United States and you want to claim asylum, what you should do, go to a U.S. consulate, go to a U.S. embassy, or go to a regular border crossing station. Declare asylum there. That way you don't wait for your claim to be processed in a detention center. You can go home. You might even be set up for a place in the States, because if you do it legally, the government trusts that you will show up for your hearing. The reason why they have detention centers is for people trying to cross illegally, right? Because coyotes and smugglers don't declare it the legal way, which is why they have to be detained to make sure they say who they are. Because if you let a cartel member in, Scout's honor doesn't really apply to people who decapitate women and children. So if you don't want to end up in a detention center, do it the right way. Do it the legal way. But the left doesn't want you to know that. The media doesn't want you to know that, because the media loves this. The happiest people in the world to see those dead kids in a river were media executives and Democratic senators and House representatives. They were ecstatic. I guarantee you it ignited nothing but glee in the majority of the Democratic Party. Because, oh good, our propaganda narrative can go on. They have no interest in helping migrant children. If the media or the Democratic Party cared one iota about migrant children, they would have increased funding to the border, and they would have helped push the narrative that, hey, you don't end up in detention centers if you do it the right way. Here's how you do it the right way. Go to an actual station. Don't cross in illegally, because then we have to detain you. We don't know who you are. Do it. Go to a center. Go to a consulate. Go to an embassy. Go to one of the actual stations. You will avoid detention. All they have to say, but not a single one of them will say it. Not a single media personality on CNN will say it, because they love seeing dead kids they can blame on Trump. Anderson Cooper would take a hammer to an El Salvadorian baby right now if he knew Donald Trump would take the blame for it. It's disgusting. It's infuriating. It's beyond despicable. It's beyond despicable what they're doing. All right. Moving on to another story that will make you beyond angry. Toronto has decided to lie to the public for the purposes of who knows what. Now, the Danforth shooting was a terrorist attack, a mental illness attack carried out last year during the summer. Now, okay, here's the story. Faisal Hussein went out with a gun and was able to move pretty proficiently, injured about 13 people, several of them life-threatening, killed 2 people by just committing a mass shooting on the Danforth. In the aftermath of that attack, a man named Mohammed Hashim, who is known as the spokesperson for the NCCM, claimed to be a family friend, and basically wrote up this statement saying Faisal has been struggling long. He said it was from the family, but it's really from the NCCM, saying, oh, the family has been struggling, or Faisal has been struggling with mental illness for a long time. We're so shocked. How could this happen? He was sick, whatever. Okay, that was a story that we were told. People said, it doesn't add up. So here's what they were not telling you. You know what, first let's see, because this is what came out. So Mark Sanders, I'll just tell you, last week Mark Saunders, the head of Toronto Police Chief, said, basically came out, we don't usually do this, but in honor of the victims of the Danforth shooting, I'll let you know that there is no other motivation factor to say this is basically mental illness, right? Whose fault is this? It is mental illness, which means screw mental health awareness, we're just throwing it under the bus when it's more convenient. Now, here's why I don't believe them. I don't believe a word they are saying. I am going to make the case that they are lying to you right now. Had something to do with terrorism, radical Islam, or gang behavior. This is not just about mental illness. Okay, so here's what you have to believe. Faisal Hussein lived with his parents in an apartment. Now, you have to believe that he was so mentally ill, right? He suffered with long-time mental illness, right? For years, he was struggling with mental illness, very mentally ill. His sister died in a car crash. His older brother's in a coma from narcotics. We're going to get into that before. So you had to believe that Faisal Hussein, who had all these guns, right? How do mentally ill people just get guns? Right? Where's his gun connection if he's so mentally ill? Right, he's able to go to the black market quite well. These aren't legally bought guns. Very few crimes are committed with legal guns. So he got these guns. He had a fully loaded AK-47 magazine, tons of ammunition, some drugs, there's heroin and other things in his room. So there's also 6 computer devices, a mysterious receipt to an organization in Pakistan for thousands of dollars, a mysterious trip to Pakistan with his father that we know nothing about. So you have to believe that his immigrant parents have this mentally ill son, and they never go into his room, in his apartment, right? They've never been in, their son has severe mental illness, but they never go in his room. Or if they go in his room, they see a giant pile and stockpile of bullets and weapons and go, what is this? I don't know, right? I can understand how immigrant parents might not know what heroin looks like or cocaine. Oh, you know what's that? It's just sugar. Okay, it's sugar. They're blissfully ignorant. I could get that. I do not for a second believe there is anyone out there who would look at a bunch of guns and ammunition and go, I wonder what that is. That looks like an interesting toy. So you have to believe that they're just, what is a gun? What is this AK-47 doing here? I have no idea what that is. But here's this part of the story I'm not telling you. His older brother, who's in that coma. So he was in jail for some gang behavior, and he was bailed out of jail. The man who bailed him out was Ali Ansari, who was seen as this upstanding member of the community. Part of his bail conditions is Faisal Hussein had to go live with Ali Ansari as part of because he stood up for Faisal. So this man, who was this wealthy businessman with all these great connections, he went to go live with him as part of his bail conditions. Then he went into a coma, and the police raided that house, and they found, because there was complaints, 42 kilograms of carfentanil. Now, you've probably heard of fentanyl. Fentanyl is killing people because it is so potent. It is like a really cheap, really potent version of opiates. So if, like, let's say, 1 gram of heroin, 1 gram of fentanyl kills anyone. But it's basically, 2 specks of fentanyl is enough to get you really high. 3 specks of fentanyl is enough to get you crazy high. The highest high you've ever been. 4 will kill you. So we're talking about, like, that's why there's such a huge overdose crisis, because you go for 2, you sneeze, oh, there's now 5 grains, that person's dead, right? Huge overdoses of fentanyl. People are getting really high. Carfentanil is 1,000 times more potent than fentanyl, which means it's not even street viable. Russia, China, and America consider this chemical weapons. Now, Canada actually doesn't consider it a chemical weapon, but a lot of countries do, because there was enough, 42 kilograms of carfentanil is enough to kill everyone in Canada 10 times over. Right, if that got into the water supply, if they found a way to vaporize it, you're talking about a mass casualty event. So what are these people doing? What is Ali Ansari doing with 42 grams of carfentanil? Right? Is he diluting it for trade? Right? So at the very least, we're talking about a gang connection here. At the very least, we're talking organized crime. Right? And where did Faisal Hussein, because a lot of the police responders were saying, this looked like military training. Right? He was able to fire accurately on the move and reload on the move. I can't do that. I don't practice with guns. Right? It's clear that this person had some military training. There's also a trip to Pakistan in there that we're just going to ignore. So his brother's in a coma because he was around 42 kilograms of carfentanil, a chemical weapon in a lot of countries, enough to kill everyone in the country multiple times. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Just good old mental illness. Yeah, there was AK-47s. Yeah, there was a weapons cache. Yeah, there was this serious money transfers to Pakistan. But you're just supposed to believe that he was mentally ill, and this is just, rapid onset mental illness or a lifetime of mental illness. And the parents, just never went to his room. He was completely mentally ill. He was completely incapable, but he did his own laundry, cleaned his own bed, right? The parents never went in there. He was completely self-sufficient. Bit of a stretch. We'll also talk about the mosque that the family belonged to, which is a little radical on the extreme. Okay. There's another part to this, which is we make a lot of progress as a society on mental illness. I hate awareness campaigns. I think breast cancer awareness is utterly idiotic. We do not need breast cancer awareness. Once we get to the point where maybe 50% of the population, breast cancer, who's behind that? The Jews! Then maybe we can have an awareness campaign. No, breast cancer is when cancer gets in the tits and it's bad. Well, right now you need breast cancer research. So breast cancer awareness is just an excuse for the NFL to sell pink stuff. But mental health awareness is actually the only awareness campaign that actually has a net positive. I would contend that we should actually make it mental health education week or mental health understanding to make it more productive. But that being said, we're doing a better job in mental illness, right? We're trying to destigmatize it. It's a good thing. To the extent, there is another extreme to that where we start to glorify mental illness, which we really shouldn't, because you all know when it gets to Bell Let's Talk Day, there's that one attention whore in social media, and you just know you're going to see a wall of text. Guys, sometimes I feel sad and I have to get over it and just remember that life is about insert quote here, and my dad once didn't buy me a blah blah blah, and my uncle, he's a dick, but blah blah blah, and then 200 likes, and then you get people saying oh, Cindy is sad. You know what? Maybe if I give that status a heart react and tell her how brave she is, she might sleep with me. I'm on it. Da-da-da-da, world saved. That's the extreme. That's when we start to glorify nonsense. But that's better than just saying, suck it up, it's not real. Okay. All of this seems to be thrown out the window, right? Once mental health awareness is great. It's a great social initiative. We can all feel good about ourselves. Well, unless we have to deal with complicated issues like increasing gang violence or radical Islam, then it's the mentally ill. Scapegoat the mentally ill, because why not? They're crazy. They be shooting people up. And I wrote an article on this when it came out. Mental illness does not explain evil. And evil is not a mental illness, okay? Just because people are mentally ill, we had the terrorist who had schizophrenia who stabbed a bunch of Canadian soldiers. He still chose to stab a bunch of Canadian soldiers. You can be in the throes of psychosis, and you still have a personality. You still have agency. Now, I'm not saying everyone's criminally responsible in the throes of psychosis, but I'm saying is the decisions you make there still matter. You're still a human being when it comes down to it. There are tons of people with schizophrenia. There are tons of people with severe mental illness, right? They don't act on it. People with mental illness are statistically more likely to be the victims of violent crime than the perpetrators, right? And we're doing a better job of understanding this, except when we have to deal with radical Islam or gang violence or anything that doesn't fit the left-wing narrative, then we can just say, you know what, blame the mentally ill. They're all, they be crazy, they did it. But it's an easy scapegoat. So what does it say there, right? I mean, it's great that we want to talk about mental illness, but is this really progress? Right? Oh, we don't want to stigmatize the mentally ill because that's a bad thing to do on the left. But we will stigmatize the mentally ill if it helps defend the narrative. It's the same thing. Right? We're all about gays. LGBTQAIIP, blah, blah. We must stone the non-believers and kill the homosexuals for Islam. Diversity. Right? Groups are only important to the left when they serve the left-wing narrative. The second your group or protected class, something happens and it doesn't serve the left-wing narrative, you are immediately thrown in the bus. Under the bus, sorry. Jews, wake the fuck up. Wake up! That's you every day. Right? It's the same thing. Oh, anti-Semitism is terrible. Unless it comes from a far-left person or a Muslim, then it's totally deserved and it's Israel's fault. But if a neo-Nazi says it, then we'll support you. Gays? Oh, Republicans hate gays. Everyone hates gays. We need a pride parade. You know what? Pride Month. Pride Year. World Pride. Universe Pride. There are 8 billion genders. Death to the infidels and the gays. Well, they have a point. And, Iran is great because, 800 years ago, they had a really good medical textbook. So maybe we should just kill the gays or let them kill the gays. Who are we to judge? Killing gays, not killing gays? What's better than not killing the gays? But there you have it. Now, it does a lot of things. So, one, it throws the mentally ill under the bus and shows, okay, we really don't care about that. But two, this is a really big problem that you can now not trust the Toronto Police Department when it comes to issues of national security. When you call something, when you make a cover-up that's pretty transparent, when you're able to look at this and say, yeah, nothing to see here on the Danforth shooting, it means that the public trust in the organization will erode. Because eventually, the police and the government will need to rely on the social contract. Say, hey, you trust us, we trust you, right? Hey, we're in a crisis situation. We need everyone to do this. Just throw us a bone here. We need to evacuate this place. Take us seriously. That's eroded by this, right? Thousands of people. I do not believe anything the Toronto Police Department says if it comes to gang violence, radical Islam, or terrorism. Don't believe a word they say, because they've shown that they will just directly lie about this. And I've heard from people who've consulted with the Canadian government on terrorism matters. It would absolutely blow your mind. No, it won't blow your mind. It's pretty much this is like secondhand hearsay, so take this with a grain of salt, and this is not admissible as evidence, but I have spoken to people who have consulted with Canadian government, Canadian military, and in simulated drills where there is a terrorist attack or bioterrorism, the number one priority for CSIS is making sure people don't know that it's a terrorist attack. And this was like, this is absolutely crazy. I know the people like, this is not how you handle terrorism, blah, blah, blah. But the number one priority of this Canadian government in event of a terrorist attack is to make sure people don't think it's terrorism. Or at least that's what some CSIS people are doing. So I don't believe what they say when it comes to national security now, because they've openly lied to me here. Right? Fool me once. You know, shame on you. Fool me twice, you're not going to. Like, I'm not... and that's a shame, because if Toronto police... If there is another attack that isn't really terrorism but kind of looks like terrorism, and they can actually definitively prove it's not, well then I'm less likely to believe them now, because they didn't tell the truth the first time. We're Canadians. We're pretty passive people. 70% of the country has their head in the sand anyway. Right? You can tell the truth. No one's going to explode. Well, some people might explode, but that's the usual suspects. They'll explode no matter what you do. You move past the Tuesdays over to past the Wednesdays, you know, they're going to be exploding. Oppression! All right. Speaking of oppression, we have a new official unveiling of Islamophobia. So, you might remember back in the day, Motion 103 brought to you by Iqra, my fathers in Jamaat al-Islami, Khalid. So Iqra Khalid made a name for herself. You remember her. She announced her candidacy outside of her riding at the ISNA headquarters. The ISNA, 3 terrorism funding violations since 2013. You know what? But in all fairness in Iqra Khalid, they only had 2 terrorism funding violations when she went to make her campaign announcement there. But she has told us that, you know, Canada is Islamophobic. Very Islamophobic. You're an Islamophobe, I'm an Islamophobe, Iqra Khalid's by the definition of Islamophobia, Iqra Khalid's an Islamophobe. So, here's what we have. The new plan, okay, first announced in the 2019 budget. The definition of Islamophobia is going to be taken from the Ontario Human Rights Council, one of the most dangerous organizations on the planet. Now, all right, here's what we're dealing with here. So if you remember M103, all conservatives or people who are concerned with it are stupid and evil, because M103 is just a motion, it's not a bill. Even though it talked about a whole of government approach, we spent $45 million investigating it. We found out that Islamophobic hate crimes were going down, anti-Semitic hate crimes are increasing, so we decided to give $23 million of funding directed by Iqra Khalid to Islamic Relief Canada, an organization that gives money to Islamic Relief Worldwide, which is an organization that gives money to Hamas. Hamas's policy on Jews is kill them all. Yes, in order to fight the growing tide of hatred, we ended up funneling money to an organization that wants to wipe Jews and gays off the face of the earth. Oh goody, Islamophobia, the number one pressing concern. Okay, so here's the Islamophobia. Defines Islamophobia as including racism, stereotypes, prejudice, fear, the big one, or acts of hostility directed towards individual Muslims or followers of Islam in general. In addition to individuals' acts of intolerance and racial profiling, Islamophobia can lead to viewing and treating Muslims as a greater security threat on an institutional, systemic, or societal level. Okay, here's what I was saying a lot during the M103 when it first came out. What it had is a lot of the government needs to regulate the emotions of the populace, which is a terrible precedent to set, right? The language in M103 was actually to quell the tide of rising fear, which is a terrible precedent because, right, if you are afraid of something, right, does the government have to regulate scary movies? Because people are afraid of them. There's a, you know, when Friday the 13th, 25 comes out, there's an increase in fear, right? There's an increase in people's fear on Halloween because people dress up in scary costumes. So the government have to quell the tide of rising fear in Halloween? But we're talking about fear directed at individual Muslims. Okay. This is a ridiculous qualification if you're afraid of an individual Muslim. All right, let's say there is a Muslim who is going, let's just say he's mentally ill. He's going Faisal Hussein. There's nothing to see here, mental illness. And he has a knife, and he's charging at your toddler. You have a 2-year-old. Maybe he's 3 or 4. Maybe it's a girl. Maybe, you know what? You have a non-binary, transgender, omnigender toddler who you love. And a Muslim man is running at the toddler with a knife saying, I'm going to kill you! And in the middle of the swing. And you feel a tinge of fear. That is Islamophobia. Or is that a rational response to a man wielding a knife at your child? Right? You can't have fear directed at individual Muslims being a qualification, a legal definition of Islamophobia. Because this is where the real problem gets into. Because I spoke to a lawyer friend of mine who actually made the correct point that a lot of us talk about hate speech laws in Canada, and there is a big problem because Trudeau wants to revive Section 13, which is sort of the big hate speech laws, which is another thing we're going to have to get into soon. You cannot have the emotional state of people being regulated, because if the Human Rights Tribunals can say, okay, he was afraid of that particular person, that constitutes hate crime. So what my lawyer friend is saying, it's not really hate speech, it's the definition of discrimination that really gets people. That's what really gets people in Canada. It's the Human Rights Tribunal's definition of discrimination, and they fluctuate wildly depending on which Human Rights Tribunal you get. And again, the Human Rights Tribunals, there's no precedent they have to follow. They don't have to follow reasonable doubt. It can be, if they're 51% believe you're guilty, you are. So the interesting thing is here, in the new hate crime, it only Islamophobia is the only one mentioned by name. The other groups, it just talks about sort of racialized groups and other minorities. So it's Islamophobia, racialized groups, whatever the hell that means, and other minorities. So again, this is the special treatment of Islam, right? Islam is the only one that gets it defined, and all the definitions of Islamophobia have been utterly terrible. My favorite definition of Islamophobia was in the Ontario curriculum for Muslim Heritage Month, because again, Canada is forever a Muslim country. Muslim Heritage Month. Why isn't every month Muslim Heritage Month? But that's October. So the Islamic Heritage Month definition of Islamophobia was any dislike towards Islamic politics or Islamic culture. Any fear or dislike of Islamic politics or culture. What a ridiculous thing. Disliking any part of Islamic... One, thank you for acknowledging that there is an Islamic political agenda. 2, any dislike of Islamic culture. Okay, during Eid al-Adha, I believe it is, Muslims sacrifice animals. They slaughter animals, and they have a barbecue, and they eat them with their family. I eat meat. I don't have a problem with this, as long as it's done in a reasonable, sanitary way. You can't be just doing this on the Yonge Street. But if you're doing it in a reasonable, sanitary way, slaughter an animal, it's really no difference than buying meat at the store. Have fun. Talk to your family. Go for it. I don't care. But if I'm a vegan, I'm a crazy person. Animals and milk is causing climate change. Blah! It's murder. It's like the Holocaust, which is why I support Hamas. I don't know. But do you think vegans like or dislike or are neutral to the practice of mass slaughter of animals? I'm going to let you answer. Final Jeopardy. Probably dislike it. Vegans dislike killing animals. Does that mean that all the vegans who dislike people who kill animals are Islamophobic? That would be crazy. But that's the definition. And in this term, words matter because this is the law. This isn't just the Women's March definition of Islamophobia, where it's anyone who disagrees with Linda Sarsour, or anyone who doesn't want to put Jews in gas chambers is Islamophobic. This is a legal definition, which means you can legally get someone on a technicality. And you see they do this, right? There's always a political agenda, right? If there's someone they don't like, if you get a certain human rights tribunal, you get a far-left tribunal, and it's someone like me, and they don't like what I'm saying about the carbon tax, they can say, you know what? He was afraid of Muslims. We can't prove it, right? And we don't need reasonable doubt. We're 51% sure that he was afraid of that Muslim. Therefore, he was doing Islamophobic. Therefore, it's criminal, right? And now we're getting Section 13 revived, which means you might not be able to say things out loud against Islam, because if they can say, you're saying things like, you know what, 91% of all deaths and terror-related accidents in Europe are caused by Islamic extremists. Or does that, in the words of the government, what is it? Yes. Federal plans, Muslims seem as a greater security threat. Listen, majority of terrorist attacks not coming from Nova Scotians. This article then goes on to quote Jasmine Zine, who is a radical activist, a left-wing advocate who teaches about Islamophobia. To, you know, it's just nonsense. This is just real big nonsense. So, to recap, anyone who had fears about M103, you were called stupid because it's non-binding. All your worst nightmares have come true. And no apology from the media or the left-wing politicians, by the way. Everyone in our neighbors to the south who said there is a crisis at the border, you have been confirmed. Everything you've been saying for the last 10 years has been confirmed as true by both political sides in one way or another. No apology coming. You are still stupid and evil and brainwashed. And that's where we are as a society. Everyone who disagrees with me is Hitler. So thank you so much for watching this week. Next week we'll be back here, same bat time, same bat place, unless we're removed from the internet for a third-party privacy complaint for some idiotic reason. So every 6 o'clock, Tag TV, you can like the video, share the video, like the page, donate to Patreon. I don't know. Just in general, you know, get a tattoo of my face onto your face. Be a team player. I'll see you next week.
In a world gone mad, only one man, okay, maybe more, had the courage to ramble on incoherently. The show is up and the reviews are in. This is the show that many people have described as good. Uninterrupted, Wednesday nights on Tag TV.
We're good? Okay.